Previously on CreationsPaths. And I was fascinated by this image. There was something about this image that just caught my imagination. And as an archetype, it drew me in. This imagery kept coming to me in my dreams, and it kept connecting to me in my meditations. The solar horse even visited me in my internal grove while I was meditating. This is where Magic Charlie comes in, because the big difference between people who are religious and into mysticism and people who are into magic, we do experiments and we're willing to just name things. I've never really had a connection to solar magic or magic that extends out into the cosmos. And yet through this image, I could feel that call, that vitality of the cosmos itself embodied in this image. The autumnal equinox is almost upon us, and we are approaching another time of balance, a balance between light and darkness, hot and cold, and hopefully the weather will get better. Are you throwing a ritual? Are you having people over? Are you doing some devotionals for yourself? Are you just going to sit back and go, it's a solar event. Yay. We're going to be doing something different this year because we found a way that we think that we can actually connect better to the equinoxes and incorporate them better into our spirituality and into our practice. And who knows, if this works, we may be starting a new tradition for ourselves. Let's talk about celebrating the autumnal equinox as we walk together down Creation's paths. Hello, everyone. My name is Charlie. I am a Christopagan Druid and priest of Bridget.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brian. I'm a Christopagan Druid and sous chef to the dog dog.
Today, we're going to be talking about not just our celebration of the upcoming autumnal equinox, but also, if you caught last week's episode, how we're going to be incorporating the image of the solar horse into our practice this year. If you want a lot more information on that, go back and listen to the previous episode. We're going to assume that you saw it, but we will touch on a few points from it as we go on. But before we get into all that, if you haven't already, don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, whatever the terminology happens to be on whatever app you're listening to. We have a lot of exciting episodes coming up, and you don't want to miss a thing. All right, let's just get into it now, shall we? The equinoxes are a hard time of year for me.
Yeah. In the past, my idea of celebrating the equinox was to go, hey, happy autumnal equinox, everybody. And then that was about it. I just went on about my day like normal after that. It was like, oh, neat note. Moving on. I find doorways a more exciting liminal space than the equinox.
Like, I understand this is the most light of the year. This is the most darkness of the year. Those are things that I could hold on to. We have a problem, and I think this is a cultural problem, that equinoxes are kind of about balance. We have the same number of hours of daylight as we have of darkness. A lot of images of balance come in. This is also a harvest festival. This is the second of the harvest festivals, and we would normally do practices around those harvest festivals. And that gave some meaning to this one for me. It helped.
The thing, like, in all fairness, even though I definitely have stronger connection to lunar and lunar festivals and stuff, even when it comes to the quarter moons, I was just like, cool crescent, on about my business. In fairness, even for the lunar one, I didn't get that deeper connection until we started working with the 4 paths and stuff. I could get full moon, big, full, bright. I had lots of energy. I got into mischief. I understood new moon. It was dark. And also I'm moody and not that great and just want to go to bed. And little energy, like that part I got because I had some other personal resonance with. But when we brought the 4 paths in and seeing that as, oh, this is the Via Creativa, or, oh, this is the Via Positiva, like that started to get that more connection.
If you want more on a more traditional view of this equinox, we did a full episode last year about our practice then, but we're going to be adding something to our practice this year that's a bit different, and we wanted to talk about that with you. So on last week's episode, we discussed how I've gotten this obsession. I've been fascinated by the image of the solar horse, the horse of the sun, and how it may or may not connect to older versions of the faith that I practice, but more how it keeps cropping up in my own practice. This is an image that has been entering into my dreams. It is an image that has been entering into my meditation spaces. In fact, I've had several experiences of Bridget with her other animals with this horse, as if it is a creature that is, at least in my mind, being added to her stable, or at least showing up so that she can make some new shoes for it. I haven't quite figured out how all that works yet, but I have started having those kinds of experiences in deep meditation. And so it is something that means a lot to me. The more I thought about it, and I looked at the image of the solar horse, which is holding the sun disk in balance. No matter which image it is, if it's the horse with the sun disk between its ears, or a horse from the side with the sun disk balanced on its back, both of these are images of balance. They're images of stability, and that screams of the equinoxes, which are these times of balance. When you look at the solar deities of the Levant in this period, whether it's the Ugaritic or the Assyrian or any of the other surrounding peoples that we have versions of their mythology preserved, the sun gods were messenger gods that also traveled between the land of the living and the land of the dead. Here we are going from our great solar festival of Lunasa, where we're celebrating the wealth of the land coming in, and heading towards Samhain, remembering the death of our ancestors and those who have passed over to the other world. Here we are in the middle, the image of a messenger moving between these two.
This is even where, for the wind horse, the wind horse is carrying this wish fulfilling jewel. A lot of that connection really rang deeper for me, because what is the wish fulfillment is that your messages, whether it's messages to the gods or from the gods back to you, or to your ancestors and your ancestors back to you, the land of the living to the land of the dead, that communication is a wish fulfilling jewel. Not only that, but balance. The whole point of the vows and the paths is seeking this balance, this harmony, and living in that balance. It kind of all just clicked together for me.
Other images start playing in. I like to talk to my ancestors when I'm doing the deep meditations in the interior grove. And my great grandfather shows up a lot in these. While I was having a conversation with him, the sun horse walked by, and he just looked at me and went, "I see you getting involved with the Divine Pony Express." And he laughed, and I laughed. All of this mythology that I had grown up with, the Pony Express from the Western movies, it flooded my head, and I laughed and I giggled. I was like, yeah, you're not wrong. It just started coming together and connecting for me, because it has been mixing and matching with the practice that I already have. I find it very stabilizing going forward with this. I said this in the previous episode. It doesn't feel like a creative act. And as somebody who is a writer, I know what it feels like to write a story, to do world building, to do those things. Chris Hughes just did a wonderful video on her YouTube channel, if you haven't seen it, about how Celtic spirituality has a fantasy problem. And I don't know that I agree with her entirely, but I do agree with her a little bit. I've seen way too many people who have told stories about how they met Tolkien's elves in the other world. And the chaos magician in me is like, they're just doing chaos magic and they don't know it. And the practitioner of Irish spirituality in me is going, "Oh, honey, no." So I think she's right and wrong in certain things. And who knows, we may do some kind of a talk about that further somewhere. But I got to thinking about this. Am I doing world building, right? Am I writing a myth? Am I writing a legend? Is this an original? Is this a creative act? Now, I think that all spirituality is, on a certain degree, a creative act, but it's different, at least for me, in the experience of it. When I'm doing spiritual work, I feel like it is in collaboration with the spirits and energy and guides that I'm working with, that there is an externality to a lot of the work that I'm doing. Your creative work, it really feels internal. It really feels like it's coming from me. It doesn't have that sense of externality and that I'm communing with something other than myself.
I used to try to differentiate it as in, is this a creative act or is this a discovery act? I found it felt more like discovering something that was outside of me that already was there, My creative part was translating it into words that could then be communicated and shared with others.
I think this is where having many decades in on a magical practice is helpful. I know the process of making, right? I've done chaos magic, done the acts and works of creation, where I know how much is coming from me through me and how that energetically feels. This is where we have to be very careful, and where a lot of people get lost, especially in magic and paganism. We should never be so high-minded that we think to ourselves, the great deity of the horse of the sun has come and proclaimeth to Charlie. That's not what's happening here. And that's not what happens with any of these things. If you hear a god speak, congratulations, there is a whole layer of imagination between you and that spirit that is translating whatever the intent of that spirit was into something your brain can comprehend and experience. So it's not actually the words of or anything like that. And so we really need to have that humility when we're dealing with any transpersonal spirit, anything that is beyond ourselves. But it really is much more of this externalized process. Some of the practices that we have done in the past that have a new meaning for me is we very often bring apples into our process and practice for the holiday, because apples are traditional to the practice, right? This is the time where they're being gathered and processed because they're not going to last forever. So we need to be making our juices and canning our apple sauces and apple butters and all the different things that it's going to be processed into, because apples don't stay fresh forever, right? They're not potatoes. You can't just put them in the basement and have them last. They don't freeze well. So this is that time of year that they're being processed. And so they're very much a part of these holiday festivals. Think about the ubiquitous images of apple bobbing around All Hallows Eve, right? The apple is here. And if you had the experience of growing up around horses or getting to be around horses, you know that it's not uncommon for somebody to give you a carrot or an apple to feed to the horse. Horses love apples. Horses
love apples.
really love apples.
Even crab apples.
Even crab apples. They love crab apples.
Love crab apples.
They love crab apples so much. I don't know if they should have them or not.
I didn't think it tasted that great, but the horses love it.
If you've ever tried to stop a horse from eating crab apples, you realize exactly how strong horses are and how strong-willed they are. I had the great fortune of growing up around horses. My grandfather owned several and taught me how to ride. And we used to go horseback riding a lot when I was a kid. And I've always had a great respect and love for them. Part of what we're going to be doing this year is an offering of oats and apples, maybe some form of apple crisp or apple cobbler of some sort for our celebration, and putting some of that aside for, or at least dedicating the ingredients to the horse of the sun as we're doing that practice. And I say it that way because I'm having an interesting experience trying to figure out how offerings could and should be done, because the horse of the sun, as I have experienced it, is very much this kind of encapsulation of the energy of life, right? If we go back to our Jedi and Druidry series, it is a symbol for the living force. That's really the experience that I'm getting here, that the solar horse is kind of the living embodiment of that solar energy that comes in through the cosmos and completes the trinity that we have of the moon stag and the wolf of the earth.
In a way, it almost feels like the most appropriate offering wouldn't be necessarily leaving a portion out, but actually offering the festivities of the communal partaking of the dish. It would almost be more appropriate to offer that aspect of it, because it almost seems like that would be more appropriate, even though it's definitely more etheric, I guess you could say. It's less concrete, but
it feels much more in line. Now, are we going to leave out an actual offering? Probably, like some slices of apple and some oats. It feels appropriate to do. Maybe light a candle, because a candle feels like a good image, right? A good reminder of the sun.
Or incense, because incense was used to carry messages to the gods. And symbolically, there's a lot of tradition behind that.
And you can hear us hemming and hawing here because there is no tradition to follow.
Apple scented candle. You could find them ubiquitously this time of year.
This is true.
It would be.
This is very true.
Oh, I gotta make a little note. An apple candle.
This right here
Right.
that you see Brian and I doing is something I think a lot more pagans need to be doing. Yes, there may be stuff in the lore that we want to bring back, that we want to have as part of our process, right? But a lot of this we are having to figure out for ourselves. The most important part with any of this is that it's something that works, something that actually fits into our lives. We were already doing apple practices for this holiday in the past, having cider, making some kind of crumble, doing these things. And so we're figuring out how to improve those traditions and how to make them work better for us.
And like we say with all of our practice, write in the journal, make your notes, see how it goes, and then have that influence your plans for the next celebration. Each time, that's the whole thing about the wheel of the year. The whole point is each time you go through this rotation, you can make it better. The practice just gets better each time.
We have some traditions that have stood the test of time and that we make a point of doing every year. Brian had to go gluten-free, and so all of the gingerbread that we used to do around Yule,
Unfortunately,
we're trying to find ways to do other things that are like that, because we both miss the flavor of the gingerbread, but we're having to find workarounds because that's a change that had to happen. But we're still trying to stay in that lane, but we're always trying to find the practices that work. And that, more than anything, is what you should be doing this or any of the other holidays. Yes, I can go and tell you about this tradition and that tradition. By the way, if you're coming at this from a Celtic point of view, from either an Irish, a Scottish, or Welsh point of view, this was not a holiday that those cultures practiced. So do what thou wilt, harm none, and do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Do whatever you want, because there are no traditional parts to this, because they didn't have a solar aspect to most of their cultural practices. Their practices were on the cross-border days for the most part. Now, other cultures did, and if you're working from those traditions, if it works for you, bring it in. We're probably going to be looking at doing something with pork because we still eat meat. I can't survive on plant proteins, no matter how hard I've tried in the past. And so apples and pork go well together. So that is probably going to influence the food that we serve and the drinks that we serve. But we don't have a traditional dinner that we have this time of year. We did this last year. It was pretty good. I wonder if we did this, if it would be better. And that really is the heart of modern neo-pagan and Christopagan practice. It's figuring out, what do you keep because it means something to you, and what do you change? Do you play with? Do you try to find something new and better, or something that again connects with you more?
if you go back to the earlier episode when we were talking about the spring equinox, there's also your regional influence, because you have the ancestors of the land and the ancestors of your blood and your personal influences. All of it comes together in this big melting pot. It all comes together and it becomes your practice and your community's practice, and the influences in it. A lot of it is trying different things and switching it up.
And let's be honest, I think a lot of us have drifted away from the traditional practices of our youth because they did not speak to us. They didn't make sense to us. We're still singing songs that are sketchy. So I'm thinking about a lot of Christmas songs that are a little non-consensual in the way that they approach relationships. Some that are downright anti-Semitic in the way that they're written, but they're traditional. So they were still part of a lot of the music of my youth that just didn't resonate with me anymore. So we let a lot of those go. For a lot of us, this is what has driven us away from those traditions that we grew up in. It was repeated every year the same way because that's the way we've always done it. It went from being a tradition to something that was just rote, R-O-T-E. It's a habit. It's a routine. It's something that's just done because it's done. Why do we do this? Nobody knows. We just do it. Does anybody like it? Now, there's difference if you have a tradition that has certain aspects that you might not enjoy, but that are meaningful to the practice. That's a whole other can of worms, and that's between you and your tradition and how you want to continue doing them. So when you are figuring out what you are going to be doing for this, let those traditions rise naturally. Find those things that you start thinking about. What are you going to do every year? What is the thing that you really want to have? What is the thing that connects you to that? And you'll see those traditions starting to arise in your family, in the communities that you're in. I think so many of us, because we came from a centuries old Christian tradition, or at least a Christian tradition that was able to borrow from centuries past. We want to have all of that with us now. If we are being honest, which I think we always should do, neo-paganism is what, 50 years old? Really? If we're going to be honest, because it really took off in the 60s and 70s, so that makes it 60, 70 years old.
Yeah.
50 to 70 years old at most. It's a very young practice, and some traditions have stuck and others are fresh and questionable. And I don't mean questionable as in maybe they're not right, but able to be questioned. Every tradition should question what it does. Every faith tradition, every lineage should question its traditions all the time, especially in neo-paganism. It's very young. As much as we want to pretend that we have these ancient traditions that we're drawing on, most of us are reconstructing things. A lot of that reconstruction work didn't start till the 90s, which makes that work a lot younger than you think it is. We need to be honest and not lie to ourselves and think that we're doing things that were done thousands of years ago by our ancestors. We are probably not, and that's okay. The whole point of these holiday traditions is that they connect us to each other, to whatever is being celebrated, to the spirits, and to the land. As long as we're keeping that, we can do amazing. But so we're going to play around with various ideas for the solar horses. I really want to try to find an actual stone horse to put on the altar. You know, those little stone animals that you can find at most magic shops. Will we find one that we like? Who knows? Maybe that's a thing for later. I don't know. I doubt we can find one that we can actually sit a orb onto, though that would be amazing. And eventually, when we have enough money, maybe even commission some. But we have a lot of ideas. That is something that we need to become much more comfortable with in the Christopagan and pagan community, is we're trying things. We're seeing what sticks. I traveled through this region. I traveled through this place, and I have discovered the truth. Weird prophetic movement happening in a lot of pagan and heathen circles. It troubles me. Not what we should be doing.
Yeah, because it really seems like this struggle between a living faith and a dead archaeological find. Put it crassly, but how it actually feels. Do you have something that you would see at a museum that you go, wow, that's from the past and it's been dug up? This isn't something that's living anymore. It's history. There's lots of neat stuff to it, but that is a dead faith, but it is not a living practice. A living practice is something that breathes, it evolves, it has room and opportunity for mistakes, because through that you get growth, and growth is what it's about. That is living. When you look at the plants in the cycle of the year, you watch in the spring as they start bursting forth from the snow and they turn green and they start growing and get all lively. Eventually they die back and go into hiding for the winter again. Part of that whole cycle. And faith is that as well. These ideas, it's part of not having that permanent thinking when doing these plans. Allow yourself to go, yeah, I'm going to try this. This looks like a neat thing. It's worth trying. It's worth testing. Write it down. Write down the results. See what resonates, and then let it go back into the earth to hide for the winter and come back up next time it comes back around and see what grows up next.
That's why we're playing around. This image is very powerful for us right now, and we're testing it. We're checking to see if it is something that is going to become part of our practice or not. I think that everyone should do the same. I would love to know what you're planning on doing for the autumnal equinox. Let us know in the comments. What do you think about our plans or our approach to all of this? Do you agree, disagree? Do you have any tips on how people can figure out what traditions they want to hold on to or what new ones they want to try? Do you have some traditions of your own that you think other people might want to try? Let us know down in the comments. If you're listening to us on YouTube, Spotify, or CreationsPaths.com, you can leave a comment right there. If you're listening to us anywhere else, even if they say you can leave a comment, they don't notify us, so we won't know. But you can leave a comment there anyway, because engagement is magic. And then head over to CreationsPaths.com, click on chat, and you can leave a message there, and we will see it, and we will be able to get back to you. While you're there, if you happen to have a few dollars, you can pass our way. We offer monthly and annual memberships. You can also support us on Patreon and Ko-fi. I am CE Dorset on both, and you can support us using the Cash App hashtag CreationsPaths. Thank you to everybody who does that. We are ever so grateful. Thank you so much. You all really do help us keep the lights on, keep a roof over our head, and food on our table. If we've ever said anything that's helped you out, please share it with others. That helps us out more than you know. And as we are heading out, oh blessed and divine light, as we prepare to celebrate the balance between day and night, light and darkness, Give us the strength to shine even on the darkest night, and to find our way even when the path seems obscure, so that we might ever be working towards the greater world to come. Amen.
Amen.